Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Tuesday, it's September 7th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And we had some good movement today. There's not a lot of trades here. There just weren't a lot of good setups, really. However, it's relatively clear early on that there's a two-tiered channel working lower here. I think originally I had it more like this, but as this continued to push on down, it looks like uh, it's really down here, like so. It actually may be more like this right here. It does seem to fit really well on both sides of the midline, and it gives you a little overshoot right before the break. So this is probably more accurate right here. It's probably more like that right there. And this is an overshoot, which leads to a break. And we tried to make a new low, but we couldn't, and we reversed. And if you see this overshoot, then you may not get caught off guard here on this reversal. Otherwise, you might have still been looking for a new low. But once we get above the CMA and start trending up, don't argue with the trend anymore. Go with what you see. I get this question all the time, but yeah, I was still looking for a retest of the low. It doesn't matter. If you start to see a trend going in the other way, don't argue with it and fight it. Go with what you see. Because sometimes your read will be off and sometimes it'll be a little difficult to tell. But in the end, I believe this to be correct. You can clearly see the midline coming into play here, right in here, right in here, right here as well, back up here. So I believe it to be correct. So that's how I see it in the end. If you had it down here, you wouldn't have been off by much. Wouldn't have made much difference, other than you wouldn't have had to overshoot, and you may not have expected this reversal to maybe happen. But it doesn't matter. Once you see it, go with it. So don't argue with it. Once prices are trending up through here, you got to take what you get, and you can't argue with it. And people tend to do that, trying to stick to the rules 100%, and sometimes it just doesn't follow through like we expect. Sometimes our read is wrong. There's different things that go on. Nothing is 100% in trading. So while the rules are going to keep you on the right side the majority of the time, and often enough to keep you on the uh, winning side, it's still not going to be 100%. So just keep that in mind. Let's zoom in here. Again, you can see the clear downtrend, the overshoot, the break, the attempted a new low, and then reversal, and then we started working lower again. So anyway, let's zoom in, start with the trade. It won't take long today because there's not many trades here. Early on, we had a little move up here, break outside, move to a new low, and this hopefully you drew your trend line off these first couple of swings, and we tried to work higher again. So you got a break, a new high, and a lower high here. It's a little bit congested, but I still like this setup just because of the fact that it probably confirms that trend line. You may want to see one more touch of it, but it was pretty obvious rather quickly that we had another trend working lower here, and you can see it all the way down. So we get a failure right here. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry. The only problem is this is a little bit sideways. It's also a first entry, second entry. So that's the second entry short too, but that's a little bit congested and sideways, but it is off that key entry point. And so you may want to take that trade. I marked it green. I'm not crazy about the congestion, but it is a reversal and it does look like prices are going lower and the lows are way down here. So you got plenty of room and it doesn't matter. It just keeps going lower. I don't think it's worth trying to enter any of these others at this point because you're having to go short right at the lows every time, and that's just never a good idea. And then finally we kind of bottom out here. It looks like we get a close outside and we get a triple test here with this big bearish bar. You got to go short at the very low of the day again, and again that's congestive, but the odds are we're probably going lower here. So if you want to be a little aggressive, you may take this trade. It's a big bear. It's a really good signal bar, which is always a good thing, but you can clearly see the sideways action there. The key to it is, do you understand exactly why you're getting the sideways action? And the reason here is Prices are trying, there's some buying coming in, people trying to pick bottoms, but they can't push it high. You can clearly see that resistance right there. Boom, 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 boom. And when you get that triple test or double test there, that's a good place to go low or go short. And we run on down, and now you've had your break and you've already had a new low. I don't think there's anything worth shorting here just yet until you get a correction. And of course we come back to the midline, and of course you got a little trend working up here too. You get a close outside, move to a new high. By the count, that's the second entry, but that only looks like one leg up, so I'd be patient, and you try to go higher again, and you get a lower high, and that's the better entry right there, in my opinion. It actually breaks higher first and turns and goes down. You could go short one tick below this bar. Probably better to wait on this one. If you do that, though, then you get this inside bar, and then it's starting to look congested. So I don't know if I would have entered below that bar right there, because your stop still has to go up here. If I didn't enter on the engulfing bar, I probably wouldn't enter that trade. There's a lower high here that broke higher, but now you got to go short right into the lows. And you can clearly see the resistance there and the support here. So you're probably coming back down to the low side after a triple test there. You're really playing the range more than you are this little uptrend. And this turns out to be a pretty good trade. It takes it a minute to get going. You probably don't get a runner on this one. Depends on how you played it, but you run down and you get this overshoot. First entry, second entry. So that's a failure right there, but you don't want to play that. Not till we get above the EMA and probably above the midline. There's a second entry long right there that you might take because it does confirm that trend line, but I still think I'd wait till we got on the other side. You get a higher low here, but you got some resistance right across there. That's the original range point. So just wait, and if you wait just a minute, you get a failed second entry short here. So when it breaks above this bar right here, you get a failed second entry short. This bar is the low of the swing, so your safety stop actually has to go below that bar, but you want to buy one tick above this bar. And as expected, it acts as a reversal, and we run up and we actually get the close outside, and this looks like a little repeat pattern of what we had up here. You run up, you make the high, you try to go higher right there, and you get that bearish bar. Again, it's a little congestive, but probably because we're getting too far away from the EMA and there's too much selling coming on at the trend line, so we're probably going to go lower here and attempt at a retest. And sure enough, that's probably the trade of the morning right there. And you can clearly see it working lower. There's a failed second entry long here, but you're too far away from the EMA and too close to that low. It would have worked, but I don't think you want to take that trade. And you make a higher low, which runs back to the EMA, but this is a downtrend and we don't have a new low yet. I don't think I'd be buying here yet. The only reason I like this one is because you got a clear trend line working up and you got a failure right there. So it's a little different than trying to buy down here. You're trying to pick a bottom here where it looks like you've already bottomed out here, and you got to assume we're going back to the trend line at a minimum. So that's the difference in why you might buy here and not over here. Totally different context. This is not a very good signal bar either. It's one tick away from being a neutral doji. So, but anyway, run up, you get the close outside and a move to a new high, and you come back. You actually get a second entry long here, but again, I think it's too early to be buying yet because it could tick higher and turn down on you. It's a possibility. If it would have ticked lower and then turned up and went higher, I don't think you probably would have got in this because it gaps over and you'd had to use a limit order. You can see some real strong buying because we just keep gapping. It actually pulled back here. And there would have been a failure here, but that's not where you're looking for a failure off the top of the channel. You want it to come back to the trend line, and just by waiting you get a second entry long. That's a really good trade right there. Higher low here, again, I don't really like that trade. It's a little congestive. It's right into the highs. Of course it takes off, but you don't know that ahead of time, and this is not a ideal setup. So comes back here and you pull back to the trend line again. It's just a first entry. That's an inside bar. and you just start going sideways here. You might have bought this right here. I didn't mark it because you already have a close outside and a new high. There's a chance it could go lower, which it does, but there's a chance it could go lower after just pulling back and touching the EMA. But that's another one you could argue for green, and there may be a couple others in here. It is an inside bar, but it has matching lows, so you may take that one. I think you're better to wait if you want to do that, to be way away from the EMA here on a second entry long and a nice reversal type bar. That would be the better play, because you're probably going to come, even if you're going lower, you're probably going to come back and test the EMA and probably this breakout area. And it looks like we may go lower here. And looked like there was going to be a failed second entry long here. I wouldn't trade it on that engulfing bar, but if it would have broke lower right there, I might have taken that as a failure, even though the failure technically happened right here. But when you make two more lows right there, if it breaks lower, it's probably going to trap you. I don't think you want to go long there either because of the congestion. Look, notice how 1, 2, 3, 4, all these bars are inside this bar. The next 1, 2, 3, 4 bars. That's not a good sign. So no reason to buy there. And then it just turns down. And again, there's no setup here. You don't get a really good short opportunity. You don't get a trap or a failure or anything. It just kind of chops down into the 3 o'clock. And you definitely, from really 1:30 on, you don't want to be entering any of that. It's just, there's nothing there. So unfortunately, there just wasn't a lot of entries today. Even with some movement at times, there was not a lot of entries. So there's enough here that you can get your trade or two in today, 3 maybe. But this is what's really hard for people, to just sit here and watch this all this time and not take a trade. And really, unless you traded right here, I don't see a decent trade until 9 o'clock, and then there's not another one until 10 o'clock. So if you weren't in here at 7, by 10 o'clock we've had 2 decent setups, maybe 3 here because of this trap long, this reversal long here, this failed second entry short, knowing that prices are at least probably coming back to the trend line there. So that's not a lot of trades in a very, and then if you look at it like that, there's really only 1, 2, 3, 4 trades from 7 o'clock on. So that's what trips people up. They can't be patient and wait on these good setups. They're trying to force some of these others that I've got marked green. And there's some others in there you could argue for that look similar to these that would have failed on you, and that's why we don't mark them. So, again, there's a second entry long here, but it's not a very smart entry. It works, but next time you try to take it, it won't work. And when you try entering in this congestion, a lot of times, even this one's a little bit congested, but you can see how many times we kind of tested that EMA there, and the fact that this looks like a range, you're just trading the range really. So, but yeah, not much happening today. Kind of a slow, methodical day. We had a lot of down movement, but there just weren't a lot of opportunities to enter. We only came back to this trend line once. And so if you miss that, then you really didn't get anything off the key entry point. And so you're looking for a trap or a reversal or something, and they're few and far between today of good setups on that. So, but that's how I saw it today. So not much else we can say about it. Hopefully we're just kind of the doldrums from coming back over the holiday. A lot of people trickle back in during the day. So maybe starting the next few days, things are going to pick back up again as we get back into the September, and everybody's back in school now unless they're out for COVID or something. So things should kind of get back to normal and hopefully pick up, and maybe we'll start getting some good high volatility movement again, that with some nice trends again. So really this is a nice trend here, but if you look at it from the open until the close, you could almost argue this is a range day, and you can see that right there. I mean, all the price action from maybe a little bit higher. There's not much there. I'd really say, I mean, you can see all the price action, and it looks like a range right there. You can see the midline holding on both sides. It looked like we did have a failed break lower. We go all the way down there, then your midline's right in that same spot. So it looks like a range day to me for the most part, even though it had a downward bias early on. It's just a range type day. And so if you need to put these lines on here to see this, by all means do it. But, you know, don't let the fact that we didn't make a new low here on a retest trip you up, because that's what a lot of people do. So that's about all we can say about today. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. It'll be a short week this week, but hope you had a good trading day. Hope you enjoyed your Labor Day weekend, had a good long weekend break, and we'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next